The first gate, unbinding the phantom chains. The whispers had grown louder, yes, a persistent, ethereal hum beneath the surface of reality, a discordant note in the symphony of his life, but Adisa had learned to drown them out, at least for a time, in the vibrant, chaotic symphony of Lagos. This self-imposed immersion was a deliberate shield, a vibrant distraction he clung to, especially after the harrowing ordeal of betrayal within his own household. The theft of his mother's cherished jewelry felt like a violation of his very soul, a gaping wound where trust once lay. This domestic breach, coupled with a seer's unsettling visit, a cryptic warning he couldn't quite decipher, and the vivid, dark, paralytic dream where a shadow entity, cold and ancient, had slipped past his very door, had left him profoundly shaken. "If I catch you," he'd silently vowed to the unseen force that seemed to mock his peace, a promise whispered into the humid Lagos night. Still, amidst the relentless, rhythmic hum of the city, he felt a fragile sense of getting his rhythm back. It was a precarious balance, this tightrope walk between the ancient echoes that now lingered in the periphery of his mind and the relentless pulse of modern life. His days were absorbed by the practicalities of college, a grounding routine that anchored him to the Monday. His evenings, however, were a different escape, lost in the haze of suyo smoke and the hypnotic, rebellious strum of Fela Afrobeat spilling from open-air bars. He found particular solace in the bustling, sprawling markets of Agbodo, frequenting Mama Ngozi's store. It was a lively splash of warmth and vibrant color, her laughter as rich and comforting as her peppery soup, drawing him back time and again, embedding him deeper into the city's beating heart. Here, amidst the friendly haggling and the scent of spices, he felt a nascent sense of belonging. A quiet pride. He believed this newly reclaimed life, this vibrant corner of Lagos, was truly his. Until it wasn't. The news arrived like a sudden, brutal blow, shattering the fragile peace he had painstakingly built. Not a whisper this time, but a shout that tore through the morning calm, echoing through every bustling street and quiet alley. Mama Ngozi's store, along with a dozen others that formed the very backbone of their community, had been razed overnight. Not by fire, not by storm, not by any natural force, but by the cold, calculating hand of a development company. Their monstrous bulldozers had left behind only splintered wood, twisted metal, and the shattered dreams of countless families. Adisa felt a surge of white-hot fury, a visceral sense of violation that went deeper than anything he had felt before. This wasn't just a market, this was his market, his newfound comfort, his people. He demanded answers, his voice raw with indignation. He demanded justice, his fist clenched against the invisible, crushing weight of circumstance. 1. He joined the protest, his voice hoarse, adding to the collective roar of outrage. He saw the raw, open suffering of the vendors, their faces etched with despair, their livelihood snatched away. He felt their profound loss as if it were his own, a deep, personal affront that festered within him. He poured every fiber of his being into their cause, a desperate, almost manic energy driving him forward. He believed, with an unshakable conviction, that if he pushed hard enough, fought loud enough, the world must conform to his will. He raged against the faceless developers, against the indifferent, corrupt authorities, against the very unfairness of reality itself. But his efforts, like an archer aiming with perfect form yet utterly unable to govern the capricious wind, were futile. The cold, sterile concrete foundations for a new, towering shopping complex began to rise from the rubble, mocking his every demand, his every fervent prayer for justice. In this relentless march of progress, in this profound confusion and powerlessness, his own suffering took root and flourished, a bitter harvest of his mistaken ownership of external events. He was trying to control what was fundamentally uncontrollable, and it was tearing him apart. One sweltering afternoon, as the acrid dust of demolition settled over the ghost of the market, Adisa found himself slumped against a crumbling wall, utterly exhausted and defeated. His mind, once a vibrant tapestry of Lagos life, teeming with sound and color, was now a desolate storm of impotent rage and despair. He felt the invisible phantom chains of expectation tightening around him, binding him not with iron, but with his own stubborn will, binding him to an outcome utterly beyond his jurisdiction. He was shackled by his own demands of the universe. Then, a presence. It was subtle at first, a shift in the air, a sense of stillness amidst the lingering industrial hum. An old man, his face a roadmap of ancient wisdom, his eyes clouded with age yet seeming to see far more than Adisa, settled beside him on the broken concrete. He was a Babalawo, a keeper of ancient wisdom and sacred truths, though Adisa didn't know it then. He said nothing, merely offered a piece of kola nut, its bitter taste a stark contrast to Adisa's sweet expectations of life. As Adisa chewed the offering, the old man spoke, his voice a low, gravelly murmur, barely audible above the distant rumble of machinery, yet piercing the storm in Adisa's mind. The river flows, young one, the Babalawo began, his gaze fixed on nothing and everything. It does not ask the rocks to move, nor the sun to cease its shining. It flows. Adisa scoffed, the bitterness of the kola nut matching the bitterness in his soul. But what if the river is dammed? What if it is poisoned? What then, old man? Does it simply flow into ruin? The Babalawo nodded slowly, a knowing glint in his ancient eyes. Then the river changes. It finds a new path, or it nourishes a different ground. Its nature is to flow. Its essence is it. 2. Movement. Not the banks it carves, nor the fish it carries. Its essence is its adaptability, its relentless pursuit of its own nature. The words, simple yet profoundly resonant, began to chip away at Adisa's rigid demands, like slow, steady drops of water eroding stone. He thought of Mama Ngozi, who, despite her tears and evident pain, had already begun sketching plans for a new, smaller stall elsewhere, her spirit unbroken, her laughter surprisingly returning even amidst the rubble. He thought of the market itself, a living entity that, though scarred, would inevitably find a way to thrive in new forms, a new location, a new rhythm. The river, indeed, always finds a way. Revelation, the inner citadel and the dance of becoming. In the days that followed, the Babalawo's words echoed in Adisa's mind, a constant, gentle pressure, like the incessant lapping of waves on a shore. He began to observe with a newfound detachment, a dispassionate eye. He saw the quiet resilience of the market women, their laughter returning even amidst the debris, their strength not tied to the physical structure but to their inherent spirit. He saw how they focused on what they could do, gather salvaged materials, scout new spots, adapt their offerings. He saw that their peace, unlike his, was not chained to the permanence of a wooden stall, but flowed from an internal wellspring. He began to ask himself a singular, profound question, the practical application of that ancient principle: is this within my control? The answer, when it came, was a revelation. It wasn't a sudden, blinding flash, but a slow, unfolding dawn in his consciousness. He realized the profound, liberating distinction. Complete control, his own internal landscape. His outrage, his despair, his choice to fight or to learn. These were entirely his. No external force, no bulldozers, no corrupt official could dictate his thoughts, his reactions, his inner peace. This was his sovereign domain, his true inner citadel. Partial influence, his voice in the protest, his efforts to help Mama Ngozi, his actions to support the community. These were his sphere of action, where he could influence, could contribute, but could not dictate the ultimate outcome. He could cast the stone, but he could not command the ripples it created across the vast pond of reality. No influence whatsoever, the developer's decree, the city's pervasive corruption, the unyielding march of progress. These were like the movement of stars, the turning of the tides, entirely beyond his jurisdiction. To rail against them was as futile as commanding the sun to halt its daily journey. 3. The realization was a stark, cold truth, yet it was also profoundly liberating. The invisible phantom chains, which had bound him to futile resistance and ceaseless suffering, dissolved not with a dramatic snap, but with a quiet, internal sigh of release. He understood, with a chilling clarity that resonated deep within his bones, that his suffering arose not from the destruction of the stall itself, but from his rigid demand that reality conform to his will, from his illusion of control over the uncontrollable. He understood that the universe plays its dances, it does not march to the drum of logic alone. And when we try to force life back into a previous form, we reject the invitation to transform. Every collapse, he now saw, contained within it the seed of metamorphosis, but one must be willing to enter the cave of uncertainty, not to repair the old mask, but to meet the deeper face within the self. The self you are is not the self you are becoming, and that is not a failure, that is the great rhythm of becoming. He remembered the whispers, the unseen knowledge he had ignored, pushing them aside in his earthly struggles. They were not just about power, not about grand, word-altering magic, but about peace through profound inner standing. His retreat into this little domain, which is himself, was not an act of surrender or defeat, but a profound reclamation of power. He could not command the rain, but he could choose how he prepared his soil. He could not force understanding upon the ignorant, but he could offer wisdom to those who sought it. There is a psychological law not written in textbooks, but etched in the soul of myth. The Babalawo's teachings now confirmed: what you avoid will rule you, and what you face will free you. When life shifts, when the center no longer holds, Adisa was learning not to panic, not to rush to restore the old order. Instead, he learned to sit, to listen, to let the silence speak. He began to allow the unknown to rise, because it is in the void, where you fear you will be lost, that something older than you, something wilder, stirs. And it does not come to reassure you, it comes to remake you. So when the shape of your life no longer fits, he understood, you must stop forcing it back. Let the architecture of your old self fall. Let the new form find you not in triumph, but in stillness, in shadow, in the sacred ambiguity of change. There comes a moment, often unannounced and seemingly untimely, when the structure of our lives begins to shift. It may not be cataclysmic, but it is undeniable. Something that once felt stable no longer holds. What once inspired now falls flat. The path that once felt clear becomes obscured, not by some external catastrophe, but by the quiet withdrawal of meaning itself. This shift can be subtle, a vague discontent, a waning enthusiasm, a haunting sense that what once was is no longer aligned. And yet, most of us interpret this inner disturbance as a threat. We believe something has gone wrong, we seek to fix, to patch, to reanimate the old form. But such shifts are not mistakes. They are not flaws in the design of our lives, they are thresholds. They are signs that the current version of 4. Ourselves, no matter how well it once served us, is no longer sufficient. The inner architecture must expand, break open, reconfigure itself. And this process, painful though uncomfortable and disorienting, is absolutely essential. In the deep psyche, change is not linear. The soul does not evolve in straight lines or tidy progressions. Instead, it moves in spirals, in symbolic ruptures, in archetypal transformations. Adisa still felt a profound sorrow for the loss, a natural empathy for Momangozi and the other vendors, but the raw, consuming rage had receded. It no longer held him hostage. He began to distribute his energy accordingly, focusing entirely on his judgments, his choices, and his responses. He helped Momangozi rebuild, not with the desperate, clinging hope of restoring the past, but with the clear intention of supporting her future, of being a force for positive action where he could make a difference. He found a new kind of strength in this detachment. A purification of attachment when it was too heavy a burden, too restrictive a chain. He was learning to engage with life completely, authentically, passionately, while always knowing where his authority ended, where the river simply flowed. The path of the wizard, he realized with a quiet, profound understanding, began not with controlling the world, but with mastering the self within it. He had unchained himself, and in doing so, truly stepped through the first gate.